Hi, everyone. My name is Shifa Safadi, and I'm the author of the National Book Award winning book, Getting Between, as well as Amina Banana series and the Gift of Right picture book, and more incoming. I'm excited to talk to you guys today about agent and author relationships. I remember it doesn't feel like that long ago that I was in the querying trenches and wondering if I was ever going to get an agent. And I just have learned so much in the past few years of having an agent, of getting book deals, of the importance of an agent, as well as red flags to look out for. So I am happy to spread that wisdom and hope to benefit you all here today. So let's delve into agent and author relationships. I'm an award-winning author of Kareem, The Gift of Aid, and Amina Banana, like I said. But not long ago, I was querying and I had these manuscripts and looking for agents. So why get an agent? You might have a book and you might think, there's definitely the indie publishing route, and there's also like direct to submit to publishers. And why even start with an agent? Why even bother with an agent? A lot of times it can feel like an extra gate that you have to get through on the way to publication, and it can really get frustrating. And as somebody who spent years querying, I totally understand because obviously of the different publishing pathways. However, to get to especially big fives and to get to almost like all the publishers, you definitely need an agent. And I personally actually think it's very advisable to get an agent, even if you are able to get a book deal. I know that there are some of my friends have gotten book deals for smaller publishing houses, or even traditionally published houses will occasionally open up to underrepresented folks. But every editor that I've heard talk about this has recommended, even after a book deal. So if you are one of those very fortunate few who has gotten a book deal or an offer from a publishing house, I still recommend getting an agent. And there are reasons for this. You really want to think of your agent as a partner, right? They are not gatekeepers. It may feel like that, but you really have to think of this as a partnership because you need protection, right? A publishing house is, in essence, at its root, it's a corporation. And the people that work there are very amazing people. I have many different editors I work with, and I really adore working with them. We work on our books. I even met them in real life. I enjoyed hanging out with them. But honestly, they work for a corporation and even they are employees of that corporation. So having an agent means you have somebody that's there to deal with the business stuff, right? It even makes things less awkward with you. I mean, your job as a writer is really to focus on the craft, it's to focus on the work. And when you work with your editor, you really want to not have to deal with business stuff. You want to just focus on the writing, the craft, the heart of your story, all the fun stuff that got you into writing in the first place. So agents are the people that will kind of take that pressure off and they'll deal with the contracts. They'll argue on your behalf. You can go to your agent and be like, I will not accept this, or I will accept this, or I want that. You are really in this as a partnership, and they'll be able to deal with the contracts. They also represent multiple clients. So this industry can really, really feel lonely at times. I feel like sometimes, especially when I started out, I wondered, is this normal? I asked myself that like so many times about so many different things. And I was always wondering, what is normal? Is this typical? Is this a typical advance? Is a typical, restriction? Is this a typical contract? Even if you have a lawyer look at a contract, you want somebody who's really able to see a literary contract and understand every aspect of it. And it is their specialty, right? So agents will deal with your contracts. They know what's normal out there because they've probably had multiple clients and they've gone through this before, so they can offer you advice. You can use them as a sounding board, right? You can tell them, I want this or I'm completely against this, and they will advise you whether to move forward or to hold back. They will help you with navigating that. And they also can occasionally offer editorial critique, which, as any writer knows, the more critique you get, the better your ability to revise and the stronger your manuscript is. Like I said, I mean, it can feel like they're gatekeepers because to even get an agent feels impossible sometimes. However, if you are struggling with getting an agent in the first place, let me be the first to tell you that, unfortunately, submission with editors is even more difficult. I hate that that's true, but submission with editors can feel just like the querying trenches sometimes. You feel like you're also putting out the books, and it feels like it should be easier, but it mirrors the process in so many ways. And so, in a way, if you're able to figure out how to pitch your book, how to get your book into the hand of an agent, you are kind of having that trial run of getting your book into the hands of editors. So you're able to really see if your work has the ability to make it. This industry is so subjective. So some agents and some editors will like all sorts of writing, and everybody has their tastes, and everybody has certain books that speak to them. It is just about finding that right fit, but it really does mirror the process. And an agent will be able to help you figure out which editor is the right fit. They'll able to offer that editorial critique to even polish your manuscript more and give it a higher likelihood of selling. And the best part of the whole process with an agent is I do feel like agents champion you. So an agent isn't going to be thinking in terms of one book at a time, which a lot of publishing houses might think in terms of their contracts. But an agent is going to typically represent all your work. I have heard of agents that only represent one at a time, but honestly, I personally would advise to not go with an agent that only agrees to represent a book because you want to find someone who's going to represent you with all of your work. And while I don't consider that like a super red flag, definitely would encourage writers to find an agent that's willing to represent all your work. Now, that might be limited by genre. So, like, there are kid lit agents versus like adult agents, and they typically deal with only certain editors, which there is nothing wrong with that. But if an agent is telling you, I will handle this young adult book and not a next young adult books, definitely think about that a little bit. Definitely ask more about these agents because I think typically agents do champion you. And when they sign you on, the intention is to keep representing you for more than one book. So, how did I get an agent and what was the most important part? Honestly, writing the book. Even with submission with editors, even when you get a book deal, it's really the craft that stands the test of time. A lot of times, I think when I was querying, I was trying to figure out how to write a query letter, and it was so difficult. For some reason, at times, especially for authors, I feel like we can write a whole book and then when it comes to writing the pitch for it or writing the query letter for it, it feels so much more daunting. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that I really even when I got an agent, I don't think that my query letter was that great. However, I think a lot of agents have mentioned, they will be looking at the query letter and they'll look at your bio and they will look at your pitch for the document and see if it is something that speaks with them. But what really stands out at the end of the day is the book. They're going to be opening your book, whether it's a small snippet of it that you submitted or the whole book in terms of like middle grade and picture books, and they're going to be reading. And if they get to a part that they feel like they cannot stop reading, they are, invested, those characters spoke to them, the plot, they see a vision, they see this selling, they're going to offer on this book, even if the query letter wasn't 100% 10 out of 10. It really is the craft that matters. And furthermore, I really believe that that stands as well for the submission process, right? Same thing with editors. They're going to get the pitch package from your agent. They're going to be looking at the book. And the first thing they're going to do is, take a quick look, but then at the pitch letter, but they're really going to look at the voice of the craft, the pacing of your story, the plot and what it looks like, the characters and their emotional arcs. So this is really what tells them that do I want to publish this person or not? And with the revision, that's what, you're gonna be doing with the revision process. You're gonna be focusing on how to take that book and revise it and make it stronger. So at the end of the day, the publishing industry really is about getting the best book out there. So make sure you're putting out your most quality work and focus on that rather than focusing on, okay, how does this query letter look or how much I have followers on social media or this and that. All of that really can be certain at certain times of consideration depending on genre, depending on agent, editor, this and that. But truly, I read this advice on Substack from a really popular thriller author, and she said, "Write the book they cannot say no to," right? Write the book that they cannot stop reading, that they cannot say no to because they have to have it. And I think if we focus on that, then hopefully the hurdles, whether it will give us a little more time to think about what we're putting out there, and the hurdles might be a little bit easier because the craft is what really stands out. I talked a little bit about the query letters and got ahead of myself, but like I said, they're a little important. They won't be the be all end all, but you query letters can also be a sign. So I do want to go over this a little bit. You know, they give you a chance to fine tune your pitch. They're your opportunity to attract the agent's attention and present the marketability of your book. So if you are writing your query letter and you get to the point where you feel like you are unable to write that much, it also could be a sign that your book needs a little bit more. If you're saying, this book is about a character and this character is doing this and this and this, and then you're like, wait, what is this character's goal? Then that might even be an opportunity for you to go back to your book and figure out what that goal is and do a revision pass to make sure that that goal is present in the story. Sometimes I will write a pitch and I'll go back and revise even before I share it with my agent. Even now, even after multiple books, I believe my agent has sold me 12 books by now. And honestly, and they're kidlit, mostly chapter books actually, and two middle grade as well as three picture books. And honestly, even until now, if I'm writing my pitch for my agent and I get to the point where I'm like, well, what is this book about? Then I realize my theme is off in the story or my characters need stronger goals. So I really, really think of it in terms of wanting to put the best work out there. And so I go back, do my own pass, try to make sure that aspect of the pitch is better. Then I send it to my agent and, keep working. It feels frustrating. However, I promise you it's good training because you are going to be just revising on repeat once you get that book deal. Editors will typically do between 2 to 3 developmental rounds. You'll do a editing round, sometimes even multiple copy editing rounds, depending on the book and its needs. Then you'll do past pages, and by the time you get this book out there, you're going to be sick of your own words. But it's really good practice to keep going over your work and train your mind to spot those little things that, you know, are working or not working and how to improve them. So, Query Letter can help you do that. It can also help you with learning the marketability. Because if you're able to say, this is a survival story, this is a story about mental health. So, for my second middle grade novel in verse, it's called Sisters Alone. It's a survival novel in verse about two sisters that go through mental health issues as well as grief in navigating their mother's death. And so when writing the pitch letter, I'm highlighting these things, the marketability, these selling points. I've even heard that of agents that have asked their writers to have at least like 3 to 5 selling points before they even send them a book. So it's a really good opportunity to really see like how is this book going to stand out in markets. So there are multiple things that query letters can help you. But again, as I said before, your agent, as well as your editor, is going to be looking at the writing. Your agent is also going to be rewriting your pitch and helping you before you go on sub. But it's like the book truly that stands out at the end of the day. How long did it take me to get an agent? So it took a really long time. I remember when I first started querying, I started querying picture books. And when I first started writing picture books, I honestly didn't really develop them enough. And so the first few manuscripts that I did query were very, very underdeveloped. And it took me a long time to figure out that I needed to go back and really work on my craft. Sometimes, it can feel like be trying to query and getting out of those querying trenches is a gate that you have to go over. However, because writing quality is the end goal, it can also be an opportunity for you to work on your writing yourself. So what I did was when I queried my very first picture books and I saw that a lot of these agents, some did ghost, but the majority of the agents rejected. I didn't get any offers the first time I queried. But it was like immediate rejections. They were all saying similar stuff. Many of these agents were telling me, you have a great idea. Your writing is not there yet. I was like, okay. So if all these agents are telling me that, this is a sign. And so I did in fact go and start going out there, going to Highlights Foundation, Writer's Digest, Children's Book Academy, Storyteller Academy. There were so many Inked Voices. There are so many courses out there. I'm mentioning Kidlit ones for anybody interested, but there are so many writing courses out there online. There's Coursera. There's so many amazing authors even that give out wonderful advice and storytelling courses. So I took so many courses, kept going through critique partners and critique groups and trying to figure out how to revise. And it did work. The work you put in, it does pay off. Even when during the revision process, it feels frustrating, it feels like you keep, working and ripping apart these books. In the end, the quality does improve, and you start yourself feeling yourself change. You start noticing things like theme and voice and characterization. And so I kept doing these courses until I went again and queried, and actually, it took, like, multiple times. So the second time I queried, my writing was better. However, I still didn't get an agent, and, it was a lot more responses, and they felt closer. Some of them asked for revisions even, the R&Rs, right? The dreaded revise and resubmit, and unfortunately, in my experience, revisions and resubmittings didn't work out, but then I started again. The third time I queried, I really put my all into figuring out the best manuscript. I wrote a new manuscript, one that I really polished so hard, had multiple PB manuscripts, started writing middle grade, really, really researched agents that would represent my genre. And I went out again. And that time I was successful and got an offer. So it takes persistence. My current agent is Janine Lee. And as you guys can see in my emails, it shows a 3-year difference, right? So in October 24 of 2019, I sent a manuscript to Spell It Like Summer, which I did end up getting a small publishing house to publish it. But like I said, I honestly feel like if you want to get a publishing deal with traditional publishers that are much bigger and also stronger representation, stronger contracts, better terms, I do recommend really reaching out to an agent. So even after I got that first picture book published, I kept trying to get an agent. So as you can see, Jeanine did really like this manuscript, but the protagonist was, not there completely, and the manuscript needed work. By the time I queried her with a totally different manuscript in March of 2022, I got the email. And as most of you might know who are querying, the goal is to get an agent to ask for a call. And even funny enough, when I got the email, I was like, "Is this call gonna be it? Is she just calling to chat?" And you get really in your head. It's actually, thinking about this, I was so worried, like, what if she's calling to tell me she wants a revision? I just really, really was in my head. But typically, when you've been querying for a while and you get an agent ask you for a call, it is in fact a call. And on that call, I remember like straight up asking, like, so you actually want to represent me? So it was a long, long time of persistence. And I was really, really grateful to be represented. And like I said, that was only the beginning of my journey because my middle grade did come out at the end of 2024. And it took us quite a long time to, um, you know, keep trying until I was able to get a book deal. So, it really does take a lot of persistence, both on getting out of those querying trenches as well as getting a book deal in the submission trenches. So, what do you do when the call comes in? This is really, really important because often I think a lot of times we can um, focus so much on actually reaching the call that when it does come in, you don't know what to do. And I remember frantically when Janine sent me this email, frantically searching, online. What do I do? What is this call going to be like? What questions do I ask? And um, I was definitely like, I think like even like with all my preparation, I still think I was unprepared. So I really want to help you guys be more prepared when you get that call. So when you get the call, you really want to have the questions of what you want your agent relationship to look like, what you want that author agent relationship to look like. You want to make sure that this agent is communicative, right? You want to make sure that, depending on who you are, you might be someone who does not want to know and does not want emails and does not want to know about rejections. Maybe they really hurt. You don't want to see what people have to say. You just want to know if your manuscript sells. Then this is the time to talk about this. Talk about what is the style of this agent's submissions? How many editors does this agent go out on sub to at a time? Does this agent represent all the books that you have? Please go ahead and be honest, right? Yes, it can feel scary and it can really feel like if you're honest, maybe they'll pack up and run away and you won't have an agent. And it can feel like, you know, you're I mean, honestly, writers just want to really get published. I know I just want to get published. So sometimes it can feel like the end goal is just to get published. And, it's okay. You'll just be okay with anything just as long as we get our goals. But I promise you, this industry is all about being your own advocate because there are going to be so many times when it feels scary to push back, but it has to happen. You don't want to get a book deal or get represented and then regret it. It is common. Many of my friends have switched agents. So it's not like it's the be all end all. You definitely can make those changes in the future. You can figure out, what you want to do if you're unhappy. It's not like it's the end and mistakes are like non-redeemable, but I think like being more aware sets you up for success better. So definitely have an idea of what you want before you have that call. So if you have manuscripts that you're working on, let's say you're working on a young adult book and you queried an agent with a picture book, let that agent know. Let's say you have a middle grade novel that is halfway drafted, let that agent know. Let's say you one day plan to go beyond just kidlit and want to do adult, let that agent know. So really, really be very honest about what you're writing. If you are someone who really loves editorial critique, let that agent know and see if they do that. Some agents do not like to do editorial critique. So it'll also be helpful. Or maybe you don't like editorial critique from your agent. That is the moment where you can say, I kind of want somebody to do my contracts. I'm not that into kind of changing my manuscripts before, so the agent can also know what to expect. Also ask if they're going to represent all your work. How do they deal with the sub rights? How do they deal with foreign rights? Do they have like a policy for the agency? Do people at, the agency get involved? Would they ever stop you? I've heard of author friends that have told me their agent refuses to go on sub with a manuscript if they feel strongly about it and will say, no, I just don't think this is good work. Sometimes that can feel limiting. Sometimes some agents will say, I only submit to an editor once. So they might not submit to an editor that's the right fit because another client of theirs maybe has books with that agent. So, you really want to have open communication and be able to know all the answers. And I'm not saying there's a right answer. I just think that having a lot of information will be helpful both for you and the agent to decide. Because sometimes it's a matter of knowing why. When I talk to my agent, it's really about honesty. So sometimes I'll, ask her, I really want to exclusively sub this manuscript to this editor because I feel like she'll be a right fit for me. And my agent will be like, okay, that works. I think that that's a good idea. And other times we'll discuss with each other that no, we want to go on wider submission. And it'll be really like us deciding why we got there, the pros and cons of that. And it's really a partnership, right? So I think that's what you're trying to suss out at this kind of meeting during the call. You're seeing how you're going to be able to click with this person. Are you going to be able to communicate with each other? And how you're going to be able to be partners in terms of this partnership in the industry. So, getting agent interest does not always mean editor interest. Rejections sadly happen. However, also, this is a question you want to ask your agent. Will they continue to represent you if your first book doesn't sell? It often, very, very common for authors to write multiple books before getting an editor deal, even with an agent. Make sure your agent's on board. And that's why I said, make sure they represent you as a person, not that one book. Okay, so book deal stats, right? Just quickly, I mean, it's very, very hard. 1 to 2% of manuscripts a publisher received is published, and it takes a long time to get a book. And there are so many books, about 1 million books being published per year and 50,000 writers. So if you do the stats, it's really, really hard to get out there. So, like I said, you just really, really want to make sure that your agent is going to be on board with working with you multiple times, even if it takes a while. It's hard out there. So, agent red flags, I'm going to conclude with some red flags to be very, very aware of. And like I said, while things are subjective, I'm gonna be honest, these are not subjective. These are straight up no for me. And they should be straight up no for you too. If an agent asks you for money, absolutely not. Even publishers, no one should be asking you for money. In traditional publishing, money flows your way, not the opposite. Typically, publishers will send you your money for your book deal and your agent will get a cut of that. It will never, ever be you paying the agent to represent you, ever. So if an agent asks you for money, leave. Absolutely not. Making you feel gaslit. Okay, so this industry is really difficult. It's a lot of anxiety trying to figure out, if the writing is, polished, and if you feel like, is the book going to sell? Is the book going to do well? Even after the book gets published, you get worried about trade reviews and about, so many different things. It is so hard out there. You do not want an agent that makes you feel bad about your work. Make sure your agent empowers you. My agent, honestly, I feel like believes in me more than I even believe in myself. And I love that because I think that the last thing you want is to be with someone who makes you feel weak. This industry is so unpredictable. Find a partner that makes you feel stronger. Also, so some agents don't like to give sublists. So this one I'm a little bit like in between on. However, I think that I personally like to have my sublist, and I personally think that if an author requests their sublist, they should know. There's multiple reasons why I put this on the red flag list because if you do decide to one day change agents, if you do not have your sublist, you cannot take your manuscript to a new agent and show them who you sub to, and they are not going to be able to know who to avoid as well as who to follow back with. So that's definitely that lack of information, it, for me, is a red flag. Some agents are a little bit wary because they don't want you like, stalking an editor on Instagram or, DMing somebody or, trying to get in their emails yourself and being like, yeah, haven't you answered? Which is definitely a no. Definitely never do that. But I think that if your agent is hesitant, I think with open and honest communication, you can tell your agent, listen, I want this sublist because I want to have an idea and I want to have information. And if your agent tells you, I just don't want you to like worry too much, tell them, okay, I will not be communicating with this person, but information is your right. This is your book. You deserve your sublist. And if your agent ghosts you, definitely, definitely think a lot about that relationship. I think that, you know, there's a lot of ghosting that happens in the industry. It shouldn't be from your business partner. Communication, honesty, partnership. It may take some time. So give your agent some time. Agents are people too. You are not their only client. They are working on multiple books. They are struggling with their own families and life. So definitely give them time, give them grace, give them kindness. It is okay to, after a few weeks, if you haven't gotten a response, to send an email and, follow up and see if they haven't gotten a chance. But if it's like consistently not answering emails, months of ghosting, ignoring you, I would definitely rethink that relationship. I would definitely say that that's a red flag. You want to be uplifted. I've often heard that no representation is better than bad representation, and I agree. Definitely, definitely empower yourself to value your work and ask and demand for better treatment. And also, your agent is going to be somebody who looks out for you, right? So if you tell your agent, I'm really worried, then they will be fine with hopping on a call to talk it through with you. So you want to be able to have that open and honest communication. Alrighty. And that is essentially my presentation. I hope this is really helpful. Agent author relationships really, vary from person to person, vary from genre to genre. But as I said, I think like across the board, they should be something that is open, honest, empowering, and helpful to you. So, definitely be very, um, I hope you are empowered by the end of this, both to do querying, to find that agent partner, and to stand up for yourself in this industry. Thank you so much.